We'll say a very good morning to James Heale. James Heale, of course, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. How are you, dear boy?
I'm very good, thank you, Jeremy.
The BBC argument continues and shows no sign of abating. And I just want to start differently with you this hour, James. They'll make it all about Donald Trump suing the corporation for a billion, what is it, 760 million quid. But essentially, the deep-rooted problems of the BBC, Savile, Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, I'm going to keep naming them whenever we talk about this, the Hamas documentary voiced by a Hamas high-ranking official's son. Where do we go? Martine Croxall, the newsreader who dared to change pregnant people to pregnant women. The list goes on. I think it would be a real shame in all of this, James, if people like Ed Davie were allowed to get off the hook by simply saying, this is Trump trying to control the British mainstream media. The truth of the matter is, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but I believe that your national broadcaster should be unbiased and straight down the line. And it is not, is it?
No, and I think that it's a lot of people trying to see this through their own different political lens. And so the Liberal Democrats, of course, clearly think that they can use this to bash Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, appeal to their support base. And their logic for doing so is that, well, this was something Trump was not happy about, therefore if it makes Trump unhappy, it must be a good thing. Actually, of course, two wrongs don't make a right. And I think you can perfectly say you don't have to be a fan of Donald Trump to recognise that there were poor editing going on here, poor journalism. But of course, for Ed Davie, he's looking for political ends. So I'm not surprised to see him jump on this. The Lib Dems are desperate to insert themselves in any cultural conversation. And a cynic might have to say, Jeremy, it means they have to come up with avoiding any real policy and instead get to talk about things which affect America many, many thousand miles away from us.
Couldn't agree more. And also, just an opinion, people can agree or disagree. Ed Davie, to me, who wants to become relevant almost on a daily basis, fails to answer the one thing that I think he should answer, which he was in charge of the Post Office as the Post Office Minister in the coalition back in the early 2014, and he has never had the pair big enough to confront one of the biggest disgraces in this country, and yet he pontificates every single day about stuff that I don't think he knows about. That's just my opinion. If you want to defend Ed Davie, love to hear from you. Yesterday, BBC Chair Samir Shah, rightly apologising, and at the moment we seem to be entering sort of turmoil there, and everybody, as you said, is getting involved, including our very own Prime Minister, James, who, if you sit here like we do, the clamour to change, scrap, defund, whatever the BBC, the licence fee, is unparalleled, OK? So unswitched on is our Prime Minister that yesterday his spokesman said the BBC is stronger than ever. You're a political, you know that the stuff that goes. Does anybody in his inner circle look at what people are thinking or saying? Do they have any desire to have their finger on the pulse? Because it's extraordinary.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, Jeremy, the big event of this Parliament is going to be the renewal, in terms of broadcasting probably, the renewal of the BBC Charter in 2027. And we're now approaching those negotiations. And Tim Davie, ironically, was just saying a month ago that the BBC needs to enter those negotiations with a bit of swagger. And of course, not much swagger left at the corporation, I might suggest now. Look, I think this is the danger for the Prime Minister, is that when they approach those negotiations, I think you can have a hard-headed assessment of where the BBC is going. I thought it was interesting yesterday, Nigel Farage, that big press conference, talking about the fact that 500,000 people quit paying the licence fee last year, the same number as the year before it. I think there is an appetite there for some cultural grip and some cultural change. And yeah, as you say, lines like that, platitudinous nonsense, which even if you're the most ardent defender of the BBC, I just don't think you can actually agree with, I think show that the Prime Minister's, some of their key aides are frankly not thinking about this, not engaging with it, and really trying to get across that sense of change that this country's institutions so badly need.
I think that the highlight of this, the look at immigration, the concentration on public services and people's involvement and their opinions, is born out of how difficult it is for people right now. I think people have always sort of accepted we're generous, we're moralistic, we're leaders. But I keep saying this, I think as the belt gets tightened, I mean, I take, you know, people rightly are going, this isn't right, we are going to speak out. Let's take the other thing that's in the news today. Rachel Thieves, as I call her, Richard III, has hinted that she'll scrap the two-child benefit cap. Let's just watch this, James, quickly. This is Rachel Thieves on Talk.
I don't think we can lose sight as well of the costs to our economy in allowing child poverty to go unchecked. And in the end, a child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money. Lots and lots of different reasons why families change shape and size over time. And I don't think that it's right that a child is penalised because they are in a bigger family through no fault of their own.
I mean, James, I struggle with that. It might not be popular. I struggle with a woman who is a liar saying to the British public, I'm going to go against my manifesto and raise taxes, not just on the super wealthy, but on all of you. But at the same time, I'm going to say to people who can't afford to have children, keep procreating and the state will pick up the tab. Now, a lot of people will go, you can't say that, but I think that's a fair answer, don't you?
Well, I think this is a tale of two different manifesto promises, Jeremy. One of which, of course, was the promise to rule out any rise in income tax. We now think that that's going to go out. That was the totem pledge of that Labour manifesto last year. The other thing you've got to remember, of course, is that Keir Starmer and Richard Reeves were asked about the two-child benefit cap, and they ruled it out, saying it was unaffordable. Now, you're very entitled to ask, how on earth was it unaffordable last year, but now that the public finances are in a much worse state and you're going to break your income tax pledge, why on earth are we doing it now? The answer, of course, is internal Labour Party politics. We've just had a deputy leadership race where the number 10 candidate got trounced. Clearly, the Labour MPs are demanding this happen. And so you just have to think that for all those hopes that this Labour government would transform the economy, they seem to have given up already. And I'll just make one other point about the two-child benefit cap, of course, which is that it's going to apply to those who've been born here in recent years. I think it'll be interesting to see how many of those are from people who've arrived in the so-called Boris wave, migration post-2020, as opposed to, for instance, the ones that, say, Reform are proposing, which suggests that that two-child benefit cap would only be limited to British-born and British families. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting dimension, and it all leads to the spectacle of taxes going up next month for people who basically are seen as part of the Labour family rather than the whole nation as a whole.
I just think it's another example of the government not understanding, and I don't use this word lightly, how the indigenous population are feeling. As I say, I think there's just been a marked difference as to how willing the British public are prepared to continually be battered when it seems that other people, or people who don't put in, for want of a better phrase, are getting treated. Just one very quick, I've had a text before we let you go. The White House is apparently, going back to that first story, mulling a BBC reporter ban. Would the BBC care about that? Would that be a huge thing in your mind?
They would very much care about it, because I think they would consider themselves to be a hugely important network out there. The journalists certainly want their contacts, they want their access. I think that that is something they'll be working desperately behind the scenes to avoid. And this is why it's important to keep up your standards, not give any ammunition to your critics, because they're going to make the most of this. You've already seen the Pentagon ban of journalists, which the White House has done. I think that people care very, very much about that.
I think I'm going to ring up Donald and get him to ban the BBC and make my morning. James Heale, thank you so much indeed. Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, 7:15.